A very warm welcome to you as you join us on today's episode of Tax Matters. My name is Olumuyiwa Matuloko. How's the week been and how's business going? The second half of the year 2017 is moving on, and we do hope that at the end of the year we will all shout hallelujah. It's a new dawn for Nigeria, a new dawn in Nigeria, and you will know in a few minutes why we say it is a new dawn. Let's begin this way. On Thursday, the 16th of March 2017, the Federal Minister of Finance, Dr. Mrs. Kemi Adeosun, briefed the National Economic Council. Now you know that the National Economic Council comprises of the Vice President, who by virtue of the Constitution is the head of NEC, and all the 36 state governors and some other important stakeholders like the Central Bank Governor. The minister briefed the NEC on the state of the economy, including the tax economy. And as part of that briefing, in the course of that briefing, the minister introduced a novelty into the Nigerian tax system: tax amnesty for tax defaulters. After that briefing, after the meeting of NEC, the executive chairman of the FRS, Mr. Babatunde Fowler, joined Governor Ikpeazu of Abia State and the National Security Advisor, Alhaji Mongono, to brief State House correspondents. According to Mr. Fowler, one major highlight of the minister's address to the National Economic Council was the introduction of a tax amnesty program for individuals. It is called Voluntary Assets and Income Declaration Scheme.
This discussion hinged on more cooperation between the Federal Land Revenue Service and the state boards of internal revenue. And basically it was to open a window whereby all Nigerians who have assets and earning income abroad and also locally to come forward and declare these assets and also pay the taxes due on these assets. Part of this scheme is to waive the interest and penalty and also give them a time limit to pay, so that for those that come forward, they'll be allowed to pay instrumentally and also rectify their tax position. And hopefully this scheme will start in May 2017, and then by then the final modalities will be rolled out to all the public.
That was how it went. We were all excited. We were all expectant. We waited with bated breath. Finally, the time has come. On Thursday, the 29th of June 2017, the federal government of Nigeria rolled out the implementation program for VATS, Voluntary Assets Income Declaration Scheme, under which individual taxpayers who have defaulted in paying their taxes over the years can come forward voluntarily, declare their assets without fear of prosecution and with waiver of interest and penalty. Acting President Professor Yemi Osinbajo, who we told you earlier is the chairman of the National Economic Council, presided over the launching of VATS at a well-attended ceremony that took place at the Presidential Villa, Aso Rock, Abuja. First to speak was the Honorable Federal Minister of Finance, Mrs. Kemi Adeosun.
It's well known that we have one of the lowest tax to GDP ratios in the world at just 6%. The countries which we aspire to join are on average at 30 to 32%, which basically means that the size of government budget, both state and local, is not big enough to serve the needs of this nation. It isn't because there isn't enough money. It is because there isn't enough money coming into government. And that is what we are here today to correct. It's a national issue that requires a collective and national effort.
There were goodwill messages from relevant stakeholders. From the Senate,
we'd like to support this very bold initiative, coming from the executive on tax payment and compliance. Like the Minister of Finance has mentioned, these times require that we think, we tax our imagination the way I believe that this program, has been born. I think that looking at the 2017 budget that we've passed from the National Assembly and has been accented, looking at the various revenue projections, whether it's oil, whether it's non-oil, I think that the only aspect or revenue stream that is totally within our control is that has to do with non-oil revenues, and particularly taxes and taxation.
From the Nigeria Governors Forum.
From the side of we governors, we are ready to give all the support needed for this program to succeed. And we knew we are going to be the biggest beneficiary in this bill. So therefore, our support is in place.
And from the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria.
This particular event is endorsed by us.
Newly engaged community tax liaison officers also made presentations.
Through this program, our goal is to educate the candidates on tax, customer service, presentation skills, and communication skills. Our goal is to empower and give every single one of these CTLOs all the tools they need to actively and efficiently go out there and do their jobs. With your permission, Your Excellency, I'd like to invite 3 of our candidates who've already experienced the introduction to the training to just share a brief insight of their views of the training so far.
Today I'm happy because I am part of the Voluntary Assets and Income Declaration Scheme. As a Community Tax Liaison Officer, the VAT scheme was introduced by the government of Nigeria to give all taxpayers the chance to come out and voluntarily declare their assets and incomes without threats of interest, penalties, or even prosecution.
Without threats of penalty, interest, or even prosecution.
Nigeria's tax revenue to GDP ratio is the lowest in Africa, which stands at 6% as of 2016. It is therefore our duties as community tax liaison officers to go out there, educate, and enlighten the Nigerian people, regardless of status, with the aim to unite and strengthen this great nation.
If we want to improve our country, then we need to understand and encourage voluntary declaration of undisclosed income and assets. As a community tax liaison officer, I feel well prepared and ready to contribute my quota to the success of VAT. Thank you.
Tax is so important that it is even mentioned in the Holy Bible and in the Holy Quran. There is need to sensitize the public of their need to pay tax. There is also need to curb corruption and create room for economic development, because that way we would increase revenue. And also, I want to urge every one of us that together we can move this nation to a destination of greatness. And that responsibility rests on the shoulders of each and every one of us, because together we will get there.
Your Excellencies, here they are soldiers for tax, they are preachers on tax, they reach out as foot soldiers on tax.
In his keynote address, Acting President Professor Yemi Osinbajo put the day's event in perspectives. Going back in time, Professor Osinbajo reminded his audience that in pre-colonial times, the old northern Nigeria and the old west had a robust tax system in place, which the old eastern region was made to follow much later in the colonial era.
In Nigeria, historically, every one of the old regions recognized tax. And it's interesting that practically every region was basically paid for or sponsored all its programs with tax money. The first region to recognize formal tax was the northern region, and thereafter the south, and last was the southeast. But because people paid taxes, the level of political and social consciousness was higher. When people pay taxes, there is no way they're going to allow the kinds of corruption that we find in the public space today. Because people will say, now that is my money, and they'll hold public officers to account. So I think
True. Very true.
the Nigerian tax system is based on global best practice. So it's a progressive tax system, ensuring that those who have higher income contribute more, while those with lower incomes contribute less. Now, considerable progress has been made with taxing those in salaried employment, So many high net worth individuals, self-employed professionals and companies are now, generally speaking, those who earn salaries that are known in a formal setting pay taxes. Those are the people we know pay taxes. But outside of that group of people, there are many high net worth individuals, self-employed persons, professionals and companies that are able to evade full tax payment due to the historical inability of tax authorities to assess their true income. So this is part of the reason why, we're trying to reset our whole attitude to tax and our whole attitude to the Nigerian economy.
And the statistics are scary.
According to the Federal Inland Revenue Service, the total number of taxpayers in Nigeria is just 14 million. Of this number, 96% have their taxes deducted at source from their salaries under the PAYE system, while just 4% comply under direct assessment. So the vast majority of Nigerians do not pay taxes. That's just the sum and substance of this. Now, this is at variance with the structure of our economy, where we're estimating that almost 70 million Nigerians are economically active. This means that just 20% of people engaged in one form of business or the other are registered and paying taxes. Despite having some of Africa's wealthiest people, whose lifestyles are the subject of global admiration, only 214 Nigerians pay taxes of 20 million or more each year. Only 214 Nigerians, not 214,000, 214 Nigerians pay taxes of 20 million or more each year. A personal tax bill of 20 million implies a personal income of just 80 million annually. Now, even in this room, and I'm not looking anywhere in particular, I'm sure that I can count at least another 214 people that earn more than 80 million naira a year. Another worrying observation is that the 214, who of course shall remain nameless, are all based in Lagos State. All based in Lagos State. I think the governor of Lagos State deserves an applause. There's another figure that talks about those who are paying over, I believe, 10 million. I think those will come to almost 900 or so, 914 or thereabouts. Of that number, all except 2 are from Lagos State. The other 2 are from Ogun State, which, by the way, is my state, and if you see what I mean. If you have a situation where so many people, just think about it, in all the states, it just means that nobody's earning. That's what we are supposed to believe, that nobody is earning over 80 million in a year.
Alarming statistics indeed, very worrisome. In going further, the acting president waxed even more professional, showing great depth of knowledge of the subject matter.
I was privileged alongside our President Muhammadu Buhari, to travel the length and breadth of this nation, and can assure you that there is a fairly equal spread of high net worth people in this country. Before anyone attempts to cover their embarrassment with an indication of how much tax is paid through their companies, as a lawyer, I'm well positioned to inform you that such explanations are not tenable. There must always be a correlation between personal income taxes and personal lifestyle. Personal assets can only be financed by income that has been subjected to tax. No company's expenses can account for the cost of a jet-set lifestyle or luxury personal apartments. Neither can any company account for the estimated 320 million pounds that Nigerians pay in overseas school fees in the United Kingdom alone annually. Such expenses are, quote, non-allowable deductions for company income tax purposes. Now, let me just explain this complicated thing that I've just said. If you have children abroad and you are paying good money, or if you have a very nice, if you have a nice apartment, you know, where you live and all of that. Now, a lot of those personal lifestyle things, you cannot cover them under company's expenses because they are your personal lifestyle issues. Now, those are not allowable. You can't deduct them from your company expenses, if you see what I mean. And I'm just trying to explain to those, because as I said, I'm a lawyer in, you know, and I know that you really can't dodge taxes in that way. So those who have been doing so, some of who are here, please be assured that that is not permissible. You can't hide those kinds of expenses under your company's income. They are under your allowable expenses from your company.
And now, the solution.
The level of non-compliance suggests a fundamental problem across the nation and at all income levels. This has influenced our decision to recruit and train the 7,500 community tax liaison officers who we saw a few minutes ago, and some of whom, of course, we've heard from today. These young graduates will go back into every community and educate us all on the tax system and the duty it imposes on every economically active citizen. To this end, we have agreed that every Thursday, starting from today and for the next 1 year, will be declared Tax Thursday. We expect the FIRS and every state government, and we will be asking for the collaboration of the excellencies, the governors of the states, that every state government will organize sensitization events that will raise awareness of the tax system and result in massive enrollment of new taxpayers. We expect that all state governors will personally lead this initiative and support the work of the community tax liaison officers by personally participating in programs every Thursday. I also request that the CTLOs are supported by other state officials to ensure that they are accepted and welcome in our shopping malls, in markets, airports, schools, places of worship, and community gatherings.
And now for the reason for the gathering, VATS, Voluntary Assets Income Declaration Scheme.
Based on the information on tax evasion that's now available, our personal preference is that those who have diverted Nigeria's legitimate tax revenues abroad or conceal them within Nigeria should face the full force of the law. However, the extent of non-compliance, coupled with the urgent need to revive the economy, has persuaded all of our policymakers that we adopt the pragmatic approach of declaring a time-limited program to be known as the Voluntary Assets and Income Declaration Scheme, the Voluntary Assets and Income Declaration Scheme, VADS. This is being operated by the Federal Inland Revenue Service and all the state boards of inland revenue and applies to all taxes. The Voluntary Asset and Income Declaration Scheme, VADS, will be operated from July the 1st, 2017 until the 31st of March, 2018. It will be supported by an executive order that I will sign into law today. VADS will offer a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to those in default to regularize their tax affairs. In exchange for full and honest declaration, taxpayers will receive immunity from prosecution, forgiveness of penalty and interest that is due on unpaid taxes, and the full assurance that all information provided will remain confidential. In addition, participants in the scheme will not be selected for audit investigation for the period covered. Let me just repeat the list of exemptions and benefits. In exchange for full and honest declaration, taxpayers will receive immunity from prosecution, forgiveness of penalty and interest,
due on unpaid taxes and the full assurance that information provided will remain confidential. In addition, participants in the scheme will not be selected for audit investigation for the period covered. This is an offer in the spirit of national reconciliation and rebuilding and must be taken as such. In addition, because we understand that some taxpayers may have challenges raising cash, we have built in a system that will allow those owing to pay over a period of time, subject to conditions. Upon expiry of the scheme, we'll consider those who have failed to take advantage of this offer or who have declared falsely to be willful tax defaulters and economic saboteurs. We will then proceed with aggressive investigation with a view to criminal prosecution. We'll also publish a tax defaulters list to name and shame those refusing to do the right thing.
It's a new dawn in Nigeria, and the mantra is change. The wind of change is blowing all over Nigeria and beckons to you. One sure way to respond is to perform your civic duty, pay your tax. With taxes, government generates revenue to fulfill its electoral promises, ensure regular power supply, provide good security, standard education, medical care, true total change. Individuals and corporations enjoy specific benefits, rights and privileges for paying taxes and avoid the consequences and penalties of not paying. Oil revenue is no longer sufficient to bring desired change, but your tax can. It pays to pay your tax. A message from the Federal Inland Revenue Service.
As he promised earlier in his speech, Acting President Yemi Osinbajo immediately signed the executive order signaling the takeoff of VATs in Nigeria. The number one taxman in Africa, Chairman, African Tax Administration Forum, Executive Chairman, Federal Inland Revenue Service, and the Chairman, Joint Tax Board of Nigeria, and of course, the brain behind it all, had this to say in rounding up the day's event.
First of all, I'd like to thank God for a day like this. This is a day where we can change the financial profile of our dear country, but not only because we want to change the financial profile, but to put resources together where we can build our country to make it our first choice. I believe that this initiative that has started today will ensure that we leave behind a better Nigeria. A Nigeria where the youth of today will be proud to say, I am Nigerian. When we travel abroad and we visit other countries, be it Ghana, Togo, within Africa, we are sometimes amazed at the level of tax compliance, not because of the consequences, but because of the love of country. And I am sure that we Nigerians are proud to be Nigerians. We love our country. We will not wait on grants that may not come. And I'm sure that from today, all taxpayers, regardless of how big and small, will take advantage of this program. I can assure Your Excellency, the Acting President, that next time we compile the statistics for Nigeria of those who paid over 10 million or 20 million per year in taxes, I assure you that all states will be equally represented.
Talking about immediacy, the Executive Chairman of the FRS immediately swung into action in carrying out the directive of the Acting President with regard to public sensitization on the VATs program, and of course the observance of Thursday of every week as tax day in Nigeria. On the very next Thursday following the official launch of VATs, talking about Thursday 6th of July, the Executive Chairman of FRS, accompanied by a huge retinue of tax officials, embarked on the very first roadshow, signaling the commencement of Tax Thursday in Nigeria.
Good morning. My dear brothers and sisters, I would like to thank you for receiving us this morning. I'd also like to thank all the market leaders for coming out. We know that for any market leader or any man or woman in business, 1 minute means money. Yeah. So we thank you for this sacrifice. But we're here on behalf of our beloved country, Nigeria. We're all aware that the oil price has fallen, and we're all aware that we all want the best for ourselves and for our country, Nigeria. There's a popular saying that soup that is sweet, that money maker. So the only way we can make Nigeria sweet is if we join hands together and start paying our taxes.
Are you ready? Are you willing? Are you prepared to contribute towards lifting Nigeria out of the doldrums in which we presently find ourselves?
Together, we will get there.
Yes, together we will get there. Nigeria now we own. See you next week.